Hello, friends, and welcome to the Yoga and Podcast. I am your host, Ashley Weber, a yoga and embodiment teacher who is living and learning every day here in the lovely Austin, Texas, and I am oh so curious about all things yoga and. If this is your first time joining us, a big warm welcome to you. This show is about yoga and everything. Yoga and Buddhism, yoga and the sensitive soul, yoga and rock climbing. You get the picture. On today's episode, we will sit down and chat with owner of Practice Yoga Austin and previous guest on the show, Rey Cardenas. Check out episode number 64, Yoga and Symbolism. It's a previous episode that he did with us whenever you get the chance. In this two-part series, Rey will chat with us all about yoga and cosmology. Through the lens of yoga, the planets, and the zodiac, we will discover how our outer world affects the inner world. And I know you're going to love the first half of this two-part series just as much as I did. Now, let's sit back, relax, and enjoy the episode, y'all. Joining us on today's episode is previous guest on the show. Check out episode number 64, Yoga and Symbolism, when you get a chance. He is the owner of Practice Yoga Austin, Rey Cardenas. Hey, Rey, how are you?
Hey, Ashley. Doing great. How are you?
Doing great. So glad that you're back on the show again. Your previous episode was really popular, Yoga and Symbolism, and I'm glad to have you back. Would you like to introduce yourself just a little bit more for the listeners? Tell us who you are, what you're about, in case they don't know you yet.
Sure. Yep. I am one of the founders of Practice Yoga Austin, and we have been teaching public yoga classes in town by donation for 7.5 years. We have a yoga school and a yoga therapy program, and so I'm immersed in all of that, and just recently moved out to Elgin and joined the country life, and been studying up on some cosmology stuff. So I'm happy to get to talk about it with you today, because it's what is currently inspiring me.
Yeah. So what exactly is cosmology?
Cosmology is just the study of the cosmos. And when the cosmos is the universal order, it's like the way that things lay themselves out within this system that we're in, this universe that we're in. So it's interesting because when I first got into yoga, I wasn't into symbolism or cosmology or any of this stuff. I was just interested in connecting more with my body and myself, but it was pretty much, it was physical and mental. My motivations for getting into yoga were related to, physical and mental well-being to start. And then I feel like this is just an extension of that. It's just going deeper, further on down the path, because it like I mentioned in the Yoga and Symbolism episode, there's a little something called imaginal causality, which is you relate to symbols or just non-physical entities, and that has the power to change your consciousness. And so I'm inspired by all of that.
So when you talk about cosmology in relationship to yoga, are you saying that they're like symbolism in a way? They are like symbolic, the universal order, the planets, they symbolize maybe things we should kind of messages that help us inform what we need to learn? Or would you want to elaborate a little bit more about the relationship between cosmology and yoga?
Yes. So as I looked deeply into the history of yoga,
Mhm.
one of the things that revealed itself to me was that yoga was brought about initially as a means of being able to apprehend a cosmology, and that cosmology in particular was the Vedas. So the
Mm.
Vedas was this teaching of what the universe is like, and yoga was the means by which that teaching could be understood across generations. And so they did mantra yoga primarily, which is singing, chanting these verses that um, program the message associated with the verses into the chanter's consciousness, and that enabled people who would sing those verses to attain these realizations associated with Vedic cosmology. And that was like the you know first form of yoga, you could say. um, I don't want to say that it was the first form of yoga, but that was, if you look at the history of like the lineages of the yoga that we're practicing in the West, and what that kind of came out of over there in the Indus Valley. Yoga came about, what we call yoga. Uh, the word yoga means to yoke to yourself, to understand, to apprehend. It was originally to be able to receive the teachings of the Vedas. And so yoga originally was about um, understanding cosmology. So I'm kind of just going back to that, and looking into it through a lens that's relevant to me, that I can kind of make sense of, and there's a lot there. So
Yeah, and there's a lot to piece to dissect and talk about. And so we talked about this subject earlier on the phone, and I'm curious to know more about the relationship to the physical body and cosmology, or the planets, how the planets relate to the body and how the planets are part of cosmology.
mhm. So one of the things that's important to understand is that the way that we perceive the planets isn't how they were always perceived. So it's important to remember that consciousness is always evolving. And, when you think about, we might have done this on the last episode, but I like to take a moment and just think about like how differently I perceived the world, at previous stages of my own life. And then I think about, how did my parents perceive reality, and how did my grandparents, and then how did like people, thousands of years ago
Mhm.
perceive reality. And it's always in relationship to the technology that we have. And
Mm.
so back in the day, um, people didn't live in temperature controlled rooms with artificial light, and we didn't have the same relationship to nature or the universe. Nature was like a force that was really acting upon you, and like and beyond just the earth. People perceived that when they looked at the starry sky at night, that would act upon them as well.
Mhm.
And so the planets weren't just the physical orbs that we perceive them to be, like, oh, that's Mercury, and that's Venus, that sphere out there. for people who had this sort of automatic, you could call it a form of clairvoyance, but they intuitively perceived non-physical phenomena, spiritual phenomena. We talked about it last time, that prior to, I believe, like the 1300s, it wasn't the question, do you believe in God, was not a thing. It was just an automatic, I have this automatic relationship with, this non-physical entity that I could call God, and that could be broken down, fragmented from the one to the many. So the planetary energies are a part of that fragmentation. And the original solar system was 7 planets. And that is because when you look up at the night sky with the naked eye, there are 7 visible planets. You can't really see Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, without the telescope. So for the pre-telescopic human, they felt the energies of those 7 planets. And the idea is that, sure, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto are a part of the solar system, but they're so far out there that they don't have the same effect. They don't have as profound of an effect on our energies as Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, the moon, the sun, Mercury, and Venus. And so those 7 planets, quote unquote, because you're including the sun and the moon in there, they represent different types of energies, and the physical bodies are just the physical aspect of the energy. And so they were assigned, people would meditate on these things, just like the yogis discovered the nadi system, which is the system of energy channels in the body that corresponds to the nervous system without dissection. They did it through intuitive meditation. The same thing happened with the planets. And so each planet corresponds to a different organ in the body that's associated with the bloodstream, the blood system. And so the sun corresponds to the heart. And you can kind of, intuit that in a way, because your heart is responsible for circulation, and the planets in the solar system encircle the sun. And so, a lot of this stuff, if you are open to it and you're willing to, perceive it from a non kind of cynical, critical, cold, rational place, from the cold, rational intellect, which is also associated with the moon. The brain is associated with the moon, and the reason for that is the brain reflects the consciousness of the heart to varying degrees, and like the moon reflects the light of the sun. And so when we're in our like individualized ego consciousness, we're reflecting the light of the sun, maybe in a small way, because we're not seeing the big picture. So we're like the crescent moon when we're in our like small I ego consciousness. And the moon cycle is actually a metaphor for like the spiritual journey and the unfolding and the kind of evolution of the small personal selfish ego into the more connected unitive ego. And that would be the path from the crescent moon to the full moon that reflects the light of the sun off of its full circle. On the other organs, Saturn is associated with the spleen, and that's because the Saturn is the force that individualized, that separates, that like anytime an individuation takes place, that's a Saturnine process. So Saturn is differentiation, and the reason why that's the spleen is because the spleen is kind of the first organ that foreign substances encounter, and it filters out the foreign substances that will um, alter the continuity of your bloodstream. And for us, our blood has to stay in a state of stasis so that we can maintain our individualized consciousness. There has to be a certain continuity in our blood, and so the organs kind of perform their functions so that the blood can maintain that continuity. And that's like the solar system, our universe, differentiating itself from the rest of space. That's what our blood system does for our own individual identity. And when you think about something as daunting as perceiving a cosmology, it seems like a crazy, impossible task. But there's that teaching in yoga that says the universe is within you. If you know yourself more fully on a deeper level, you can know the universe. We're a microcosm of the macrocosm. And so by knowing ourselves, we can, understand the realities of the universe. And I think we talked about that last time too, a little
Yeah,
bit.
there's bits of symbolism within this subject of cosmology for sure. I'm
Mhm.
curious about, do you know the stomach and the liver planet, those planets associated with those? I'm just curious.
Yeah, it's cool. And this is like, so this will be like in the realm of knowledge. And then, and so when you get this information, it's only going to become relevant if you meditate on it and work with it for a while. It takes a while for it to really provide any sort of value, I would say. But the liver is associated with Jupiter. Jupiter, the qualities associated with Jupiter are like expansiveness, nourishment. Jupiter's like the sun, the SON sun that is born, that restores the order, and it like Jupiter's Saturn's sun. And in Greek mythology, Saturn is Kronos, and Jupiter is Zeus, and Zeus ends up killing Kronos, but but anyway, um, there's all sorts of reasons for that, and it's like a rebirth kind of thing. But yeah, the liver is Jupiter, and what the liver does is, it, instead of like extracting stuff out of the bloodstream, it adds in gall, which is a substance that cleanses the blood. And so rather than taking away, it's additive. And so that's why it's Jupiter. And then Mars is the gallbladder, and Mars is like Jupiter's little brother.
Uh-huh.
And so Mars stores the gall and then acts on behalf of Jupiter. Like, once Jupiter calls forth the gall to be sent into the bloodstream, Mars, has it
The
there.
action.
Yeah.
Mars has that action.
So it's all pretty, it's abstract, and it takes a while to, you take some time to meditate on these things, and
Mhm.
and it'll start to bear fruit. And it relates to me to physical yoga, because in the yoga that I teach, it's detailed alignment. And so we're talking about, doing specific things with specific parts of the body. And at first, when you hear a cue to say, like, okay, pull from your inner knee to your inner groin to draw your thigh bone into your hip socket, some people are like, what the hell? How do I access that part of my body?
Uh-huh.
But through repetition, and when you put your mind on it over time, repeatedly, it starts to happen. You enable yourself to start to, you yoke that action to your own abilities, um, by spending some time with it. And so the same goes for this kind of conceptual stuff. But
Mhm.
you start to be able to relate to things that you didn't think you'd be able to relate to. The one interesting thing is, the kidneys corresponds to Venus, and the kidneys are all about elimination, and like the kidneys are like, it transforms the waste from the blood into urine, and pee it out, get rid of it. But and strangely enough, that's all, it also affects blood pressure, and so it's associated with conscience, like your own conscience. They
Oh.
say that it's governed by your kidneys. And you know, a lot of people, conscience is also in the heart too, you know, like what is your heart telling you kind of thing. But you have to understand that the kidneys relate to the heart through the blood. So it's part of the system. Yeah. Consciousness as a function of the kidneys. And anytime our organs are evolving too. So back in the day, like we'll go back to that Greek mythology, conscience for earlier humans was externalized. It wasn't in the kidneys. You couldn't, you know, curate it yourself, but it had to be externalized in the form of these beings are called in Greek mythology the Furies. And so if you did something wrong, the Furies were going to, you know, come down upon you and make you pay for it. And so that's why you would, that would be the force that motivated you to cultivate your sense of conscience of what you
Wow.
should and shouldn't do. But for us, it's like we have that capacity to cultivate conscience ourselves now within us. And that's what, and so those external beings kind of let go of the strings and they're like, okay, you're on your own now. You gotta, you know, cultivate it yourself. But I think part of that process is kind of regaining an understanding of beings that forces that act upon us,
Mm.
but we're not compelled by them. We're seeking them out consciously ourselves. I hope that makes sense. But
Yeah,
it's
it
not.
does. It does. Well, it sounds like we've evolved to like from because this is a lot of historical like kind of going back in time to where maybe humans needed more of an external guide to be good,
Mhm.
and now that has become internal. Somewhat recently, I had Brandy Jo Perkins and Caroline Caswell, owners of Earth Commons, on the show. Check out episode number 62 when you get a chance. Earth Commons is so much more than just an apothecary. They offer all types of things and they offer classes. And I have been attending their virtual mystery herb class monthly and have been learning so much about herbs. This class has taught me about having a relationship with herbs versus kind of my old way of just memorizing what they do from a book. I have benefited greatly. Not only has my nervous system improved, but my digestive system has gotten better from the support of these herbs. Fun fact, this podcast is fueled by Earth Commons herbs. I have a warm cup of herbal tea with every interview, every recording, every editing session. Right now, I'm drinking a combination of Tulsi and passion flower tea. Also, as a ritual for producing each episode, I light a vetiver bundle, and that helps with grounding. Earth Commons is so affordable. They offer both really fun items and then they also offer medicinal products. So there's something for everyone when you shop there. You can check them out if you're in the Austin area at 813 Springdale Road or visit them online at earth-commons.com. I'll link all their info in the show notes so you're just one click away from connecting with them. Remember, when you support local business, you're also supporting your community. You're supporting someone's dream as well. And go get yourself some herbs, and you might as well support yourself too. Remember, when you support local business, you're also supporting your community as well as supporting a dream. Now, go get yourself some herbs and support yourself too. And we're back. What's the stomach? What planet's associated with the stomach?
You know, the stomach, like in terms of the cavity itself, I don't, it doesn't have an association with a particular planet, but Mercury is the lungs.
Oh.
Venus is the kidneys. Mars is the gallbladder.
Uh-huh.
Jupiter's the liver. Saturn's the spleen. The brain is the moon, and the heart is the sun. So that's the seven.
I see.
there are zodiacal forces that are associated with the body as well. So the stomach is associated with Virgo.
I know that one because I am ruled by my stomach.
Oh, there you go.
Hardcore.
Are you Virgo?
Yeah,
Oh,
guilty.
cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Very cool.
Yeah, but like, yeah, I'm curious about the zodiac system and how it relates to the organs or to the body or just cosmology in general. So, would you care to elaborate more on that subject?
Hmm. Yeah. So basically, we have the planets, right? Well, I'm gonna talk a little bit more about the planets, then we segue into the
Yeah.
zodiac. If that works. So the planets, they're called the seven spheres, and they reflect energies associated with the law of seven. And the law of seven is also called the law of evolution. And so
Mm.
anytime that there's an evolutionary process taking place, you could say that there are seven steps involved. And we see the number seven we like reflected in so many things, like the rainbow, the musical scale,
Yeah,
these
actually.
planets, the the visible planets, the days of the week, the
Mhm.
number of continents on the planet. There's seven all throughout all the mythologies. There's like the seven I statements of Christ. There's the seven lands in the Vedas, and there's the number seven's everywhere, and it reflects this law of progress. And the way that I like to look at it is like through the musical scale, the notes do, re, and mi, they have the same interval of space in between. If you were to like pull up a string, a monochord, and you plot the notes of the musical scale on that string, there would be an equal distance of space between do, re, and mi. And then
Mhm.
in between mi and fa, there's like half the amount of space. So it's a smaller interval to squeeze through. So when you reach that, when you're going from the third step of evolution to the fourth step, it's a little bit of a tighter squeeze. So you need a boost. And sometimes that boost is called grace, or sometimes it's called third force or first conscious shock. But you need some sort of boost to get to that next step. And so that is like in the chakras.
Mm.
First three chakras are associated with the physical body, and they happen automatically. And then if you want to get up to that fourth chakra consciousness, which is the heart consciousness, which is being able to be present, being able to transcend whatever circumstances are acting upon you. Because if you aren't able to come into the present moment, you can't separate yourself from those forces, and you are just being compelled. You're kind of acting automatically, unconsciously, based on what's happening to you. But if you can, through grace and effort and community, get to that fourth state, you come into the ability to be present. And then you get to move on and do the higher level challenges. But so I just wanted to talk about the law of seven, because the planets reflect that law. And when all those energies are firing together, we kind of hear this divine harmony, this harmonious sound. It's called the music of the spheres.
Oh.
That's the law of seven. And so that kind of reflects essence, or the just force of Shakti that animates the elements. And then when we get into the zodiac, we're talking about the law of 12. And zodiac is more oriented towards nature, right? It's more like so it's elements, right? Because there's like fire signs and water signs and earth signs, and so the zodiac is four elements reflected in the three aspects of the human being. And those three aspects are physical body, soul, which is kind of like the feeling quality of the heart, and spirit, which is kind of like the mind. Or excuse me, physical body, soul, spirit, across the 4 elements. 3 times 4 is that you get the 12 zodiac. And,
Oh, okay.
yeah, and then the qualities associated with the zodiac reflect in each body part. And we can go up the body and talk about that if you want to.
Yes, I know nothing about this, so this is exciting too. I mean, I did know Virgo was associated with stomach, but that's just because I am. But I would like to learn all the body parts.
Yeah, and for me, it's really helpful to, because when I think about, you know, you're trying to remember someone's zodiac or what's the next zodiac that comes after this one, if you have it associated with the body parts, it makes it really easy because it's in order.
So, what are the body parts associated with the zodiac specifically?
Yeah, so let's go from the bottom to the top, and this is a good exercise, because if you know the energies of the zodiac, you can kind of cultivate those energies within your physical body based on the parts of your body that are associated with it, and you could tend to those qualities associated with the zodiac by associating with those parts of your body. So like Pisces is the feet, and you can remember that because this Pisces, you know, they kind of fish kind of look like feet. The Pisces are the 2 fish, and you've got your 2 feet, you know. And I will say this too, because I just talking about Pisces made me think about this, and it is relevant to like my own evolution. Like when I got into yoga, it was about, you know, the physical aspect, being in my body, and just I was really just inspired by that. And then now I'm kind of getting into this more conceptual, symbolic stuff. And that corresponds with the transition between the Piscean age, which is the age that we're exiting out of. Some people say that we're already out of it, and some people say that we're in the process of transitioning out of it. But we're at the end of the Piscean age, and Pisces are the fish that hide in the water. And the water, you know, well, we're transitioning into the age of Aquarius, which is the water bringer. So going from the fish hiding in the water, don't know that they're in the water at all. And they're the 2 opposites. They're the yin and the yang swimming in the water. So this is like associated, the Piscean age was associated with the cultivation of the scientific method and scientific rationality, dealing in the realm of opposites, and transforming matter, appropriating matter into ways that we want to use it. And then we're going into the age of the water bringer, and water is the capacity for spiritual reflection, because like, you know, the water in the still lake reflects the sky, and the sky is associated with the spirit and reflect. So to me, that means that we are in the process. The impetus of this next age is going to be to regain spiritual perception in an intuitive way, not in like a forceful, dogmatic, external way. So that's what the age of the water bringer is all about. And that brings us to the next sign, which is Aquarius, which is the ankles. And the way I remember Aquarius and ankles, besides them both kind of starting with A, is that the ankles are the part of our body that takes the horizontal domain of the fish and brings it into the vertical. And the vertical is also considered the spiritual domain. It's the eternal now. It's like the vertical arm of the cross. And so the ankles reflect that in the body. Now we're going up, you know? And so the next sign after Aquarius is Capricorn. And so that's the knees. That's the earth element of the physical body. And I just think about that as I need to go deeper and meditate on Capricorn as the knees. You know, I just remember the kneecaps are very hard, strong, you know, the bones are exactly kind of like the horns of a goat. Exactly. So, and then the next one is Sagittarius, is the thighs, the quadriceps, and that's the fire sign. And, you know, when you're doing yoga poses, the thighs tend to burn. So that's one way to remember that. And the Sagittarius, the fire sign associated with the physical body, is it kind of relates to the struggle for physical existence, right? And the sacrifice that it takes to make it keep going. And fire is associated with sacrifice. And then next we have Libra, which is, the balance. And so you can see, like, where's your center of gravity? Where's your balance at? It's in your hips and your pelvis. So it's the pelvis right there, with the legs being like the two scales. Pelvis is Libra. Sex organs, Scorpio, because they give the life, which creates the potential for death, because once you're alive, you die. And Scorpion, that's the sting of death, that you realize from being alive. And then we have Virgo as the belly. And I think that, is like the womb, the divine feminine, the potential. And then after Virgo, is it what is it?
Is
What's
it
after
Leo,
Virgo?
the heart?
Leo. Yeah, that's right. Leo's the heart, the lion. You can remember that from the sun, and the lion's mane. The lion looks like the sun. That's why the lion's the king of the jungle, even though he's not like the biggest, best fighter. He's not the tiger's bigger than the lion, and arguably maybe a little bit better at combat, could be called the king, but the lion's got that majestic mane that looks like the sun. So yeah, that's Leo, the sun, and the heart is the sun of our body. And then the protector, Cancer, the crab shell, that's the chest plate and the rib cage that protects all of the organs of the blood system. And then we've got Gemini as the shoulders and the arms, and that's the duality of left and right, and cooperation and unity is the highest striving of Gemini. And then for your throat, you've got Taurus, which is interesting. Like, one of the ways that I remember that is your windpipe is like an inverted, alive and moist horn.
Oh, and the bull.
Yeah, exactly. And so when you used to blow into the horn and it would make the sound. So we've got that inside of us. Our windpipe is just a horn that is alive and fluid. Yeah, so that's how I remember that one. And then Aries is the top of the head, and that's the ram head button. And Aries, you can think about it as like rams button heads, and that's why, like, during the age of Aries, during the Aryan age, there was a lot of fighting and war. But the highest aspect of Aries is the sacrificial lamb. Sacrificing yourself. So yeah. So that's how the zodiac manifests in the body, and it's worth spending a little time on that one. Just thinking about those things and learning about the energies associated with those signs if you don't know them already. But those signs, the zodiac, it's associated with personality, right? Like, oh, what's your yeah, you're a Virgo, I'm a Cancer, I'm very sensitive, blah blah blah. But did you know that an esoteric understanding of, like, Jesus and the 12 disciples represent the 12 signs of the zodiac in Gnostic and esoteric Christianity. And so when Jesus is washing the disciples' feet, that the meaning of that story is that the divine being, the highest cosmic being, again, according to Christianity, the Christ, is thanking the spirits of personality, because they are the means by which, the personality is the means by which we find transcendence. It's the vehicle for ascending our consciousness. And so that's like the divine one thanking the 12 for being the means by which human beings can elevate.
Wow. No, I had no idea that there was an association. That's wild.
Yeah, I didn't know that for the longest time either, but you know, they I feel like there's a shallow understanding of the meaning of religious teachings in general that I experienced as a child that turned me off to all of it. So I did kind of a full 180. Yeah, I was turned off to all of it, and I kind of just was creating my own meaning and just acting intuitively, but with a lot of resentment towards traditional teachings. And it got me in a bit of trouble in my own life. And I just somehow, through an act of grace, realized that instead of resenting and rejecting these teachings, I should try to understand them all on a deeper level, so that instead of being resentful, I could be curious and see what value is there and what's relevant to me. So it's been nice. I've been seeking to understand the thread of truth that weaves through all religions and spiritual teachings, and it's definitely there, and there's a lot of people that are inspired by learning more about that. Is what I'm realizing, because there's a lot of
Stay tuned next week for the second half of this two-part series. I hope you enjoyed today's episode about yoga and cosmology with the knowledgeable Rey Cardenas. Do yourself a favor and connect with Rey. All of his info is in the show notes, so you're just one click away from connecting with him. If you liked what you heard, please share the show with your friends. And if you would like us to keep going, please hit that subscribe button. Also, you can leave us a glowing 5-star review on Apple Podcast or wherever you get your podcast. A big thank you in advance for doing that. If you have any questions or comments, or would like to apply to be a guest on the show, let us know why you want to be a guest on the show. Tell us about you. Tell us what subject you want to talk about. And email us at yogaandpodcast@gmail.com. The and is spelled out YOGAAND podcast@gmail. Please follow us on Instagram. Our handle is also Yoga and Podcast. Did you know that we have a Yoga and Podcast Patreon? For the price of a coffee, you can support the show. Also, there are great member perks such as shout-outs on the show. We send you podcast stickers and a love note in the mail when you sign up. You can earn official podcast merchandise over time. And we also have Yin Yoga, live Yin Yoga 3 days a week virtually with me. So you get to be a part of a virtual yoga community as well. You can check that out on patreon.com/yoga and podcast. The theme song is performed by Allie Holder. Sound engineering and mixing by Bentley the Cat. Guest booking and media by Chloe the Kitty. Remember that this podcast is for everyone. If you are a human living on planet Earth, you might benefit from listening to Yoga and Podcast. See you next week.